Hey guys, it's Libby. So I'm going to start this video off with a little bit of news. I am moving. I'm staying within Amsterdam, but I'm moving from Centrum to Zuid, which is about half an hour to the south. So I'll finally be living in something that can kind of be considered the burbs. I am very excited about this. I am a burb kind of gal. So there should be less noise in the background of my videos, which you guys probably haven't noticed too much because I try to film around it. But I'll be moving to a much more sedate community where my main neighbors are swans. So since this may cause a bit of scheduling complications, I'm filming a couple of evergreen videos right now. Today I'm going to do the Reading the Humanities Tag, which was created by Richardson Reads, and then you can also look forward to the 52 Nifty Bookish Cues tag. Eventually, because I may have to pack up my camera, and obviously I'm going to be packing up my books. And this also means that the Bard Book Club video for Henry IV Part 2 may be a little bit late. Oh, I feel really bad about that. I had to sort of kill myself to do it, but I managed to get the Richard II video up in the last hour and a half of February. But I think this one may be a little bit late. It may also be filmed with a different background and filmed in multiple pieces. We'll just see how that all goes. So thank you for your forbearance. But to the Reading the Humanities tag. I wanted to do this because I double majored in college, and both of my majors were in the humanities, and they were interdisciplinary. So most majors, college majors, are focused on looking at the world through a particular lens. So sociology, you're looking at the world through the way people interact with each other. Biology, you're looking at the world I don't know, I should not have started this sentence. You're looking at the world in the way that cells interact, or something like that. But my two majors, classical studies and French and Francophone studies, are both studies of particular time periods as opposed to a particular method. So I used multiple methods to attack the same material. So my education contained a broad spectrum of the humanities. So, I was doing archaeology, I was doing language and linguistics, I was doing, for the record, I was not actually doing any archaeology, I was reading about other people's archaeology. I was doing comparative literature, I was doing history, I was doing material culture, I was doing history of science, all sorts of things. So I am interested in doing this tag, so I'm going to do it. Okay, let's begin. Questions 1 and 2 I'm actually going to combine because my answer is the same. 1 is name a book or author who uses the field of or concepts from anthropology in their work, and number 2 is a book or author who uses archaeology in their works. I actually consider archaeology to be a subset of anthropology. I also consider linguistics to be a subset of anthropology. Yell at me in the comments if you so desire. And for both of these, I'm picking Michel Faber, who wrote The Crimson Petal and the White, although that one is not particularly anthropological or archaeological. The Courage Consort, which is a collection of 3 novellas. Under the Skin, which is a science fiction novel that is very easy to spoil, so I have not really been able to say anything about it on this channel. And he also wrote The Book of Strange New Things, which is a first contact story, or it's not first contact, it's sort of, in the early phases of contact with aliens, and it's about bringing religion to them. So he is definitely interested in anthropological methods in his writing, and also in one of the novellas in The Courage Consort, The 199 Steps, the main character is an archaeologist. So I think that's the only book that I've read that contains scenes of archaeology, actually being done. Question 3 will take us a while. It is, have you read a work from ancient Greece or Rome? If so, what was it? And do you have a favorite author or work? They did, in fact, make me read some things during my classics major. At the College of William and Mary, classical studies was the department, and then there were 4 different majors within the department. Ancient Greek, which is what I did, Latin, classical archaeology, and classical civilizations, which is like for people who don't want to actually learn the languages. In order to major in Greek, you have to do at least 2 semesters of Latin, and in order to major in Latin, you have to have at least 2 semesters of Greek. So I had 7 semesters of Greek and 4 semesters of Latin. And that was just reading the texts in their original language. I also read lots of classical stuff in translation for my other courses about Greek tragedy, about literature of the Trojan War, about pagans and Christians in the Roman world, or some other classes I took, women in antiquity, Roman Britain. Those were my main upper level classes. So in Greek, I have read selections of the Iliad, the entirety of the Agamemnon, selections of Libation Bearers and the Eumenides, the entirety of Oedipus Rex, selections of Alcestis, the entirety of the Frogs, which was quite fun, selections from Ecclesiazusae, which is translates to the assemblywomen, and that's normally how you'll see it listed, but Ecclesiazusae is way too fun to not say. Selections of the Clouds, almost all of the Symposium, the Phaedrus, the Ion by Plato, not the tragedy, on the murder of Eratosthenes by Lysias, which is a law case, part of the Constitution of the Lacedaemonians, and part of Daphnis and Chloe, which is a novel. In Latin, I read some Cicero, and I don't remember what it was, several poems of Catullus, selections of the Aeneid, and selections of the Metamorphoses, mainly the Daphne and Apollo story. And then in English, I have read basically all of the Greek tragedies. Like, there's a couple that I'm missing, but I didn't want to go through and figure out which ones they were. I definitely haven't read... No, actually, I have read Phoenician Women. I haven't read Suppliant Women. And then I've also read Lysistrata. I've read all of Sappho. I've read the Odyssey, of course. I've read both apologies, Plato's Apology and Xenophon's Apology. I've read the Iliad by Statius, which is an incomplete epic poem. I've read part of the Metamorphoses by Apuleius, which is normally translated as The Golden Ass in English. I've read the Heroides, and I've read Seneca's Agamemnon. And then there's definitely other stuff that I've read that I don't remember what it was. In my 2 history-based classes, Women in Antiquity and Pagans and Christians in the Roman World, I read a lot of, like, short things like inscriptions, a single paragraph from The Art of Love, that sort of stuff. So yes, I have read 1 or 2 works from ancient Greece and Rome. And do I have a favorite? My favorite is the Oresteia, which is the only complete trilogy of tragedies that we have. It consists of Agamemnon, Libation Bearers, and Eumenides by Aeschylus. If you will not accept a play cycle, then I change my mind a lot about whether I prefer Agamemnon or the Libation Bearers. They are both very good. Okay, question 4, history. Do you have a favorite historical period you enjoy reading about? If so, what is it? Any book that stands out? Okay, so the historical period that I read about the most is the Victorian period. I actually kind of dislike reading books set in the time periods that I've studied. So early modern France and the classical period. I've studied Greece more, so I like to read books set in ancient Greece less than Rome. So I happen to read more books about the Victorian period, but I think that's because authors are writing more books about the Victorian period. I'm quite happy to read early modern non-French stuff. I'll read the occasional early modern French thing. You just got to be really careful with your portrayal of Louis XIV if you want to do so, because I have strong opinions on that man. Happy to read medieval literature, 20th century literature. I just want it to be good, and right now it seems like a lot of the good writers are writing 19th century, although that's maybe changing a little bit. We have The Fair Fight by Anna Freeman. We have The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock, which are both 18th century. So I'll go wherever the books are good. Okay, question 5. Linguistics or languages? Reading is about language, among other things. What is your favorite translated work of literature? So when people on BookTube, and also in real life, say translated work, I interpret that as work that is not in my native language, because I've read things in 5 languages, and I think I should... I think it's actually better to be reading things in the language they were originally published than in translation. So, obviously reading stuff in translation is better than only reading things in your native language, but of course, if you have the ability to, reading them in the original is optimum. The 5th language, by the way, is Old French. So if I had to pick my favorite translated work of literature, meaning my favorite work of literature that was not originally in English and that most of my colleagues would be reading in translation, I would probably go with the Agamemnon or the Libation Bearers. But if you want an actual translation, there's actually a really good translation of the Oresteia by Tony Harrison. It's a theatrical translation, so it's meant to be performed. So some literal meaning was sacrificed in order to get better metaphor and rhythm. He wrote it in, I think, the 1970s or maybe 80s for production at the National Theatre of all 3 plays. And they filmed this, and it's available on YouTube. I will leave a link below. It is amazeballs. I once downloaded these and put them on my phone, and I would just listen to them as the entertainment of the day. It is so good. It is not very accessible. And the thing about the Oresteia, the first play, the Agamemnon, opens with a prologue, which is relatively comprehensible. I mean, it's a little bit disorienting, but it's kind of supposed to be that way. And I think people can accept that, if I don't know what is going on in exactly the beginning of a work of fiction, then that's okay. But then you move on to the first choral ode, which is so opaque and some of the hardest Greek to translate. This was the only time my professor was ever like, I actually have no idea what the grammar of this sentence is. There's a dependent clause being anticipated by an adjective, which is not a thing that happens. So the first choral ode is very confusing because people are talking about this horrific crime of a father killing his daughter, and they actually don't want to talk about it. So they keep sort of angling towards it and then diverting. So it is very hard to understand if you have no idea what's going on. And even if you do have some idea what's going on, it helps to listen to it a couple of times. So if you do want to go watch the National Theatre production, don't get discouraged in the first 20 minutes. Power through, or if you absolutely will not watch it any other way, skip ahead to the entrance of Clytemnestra, who's in an orange dress, and go on from there. And then go back and enjoy the first choral ode at the end, because it is beautiful. Anyway, moving on to law and politics. Do you read political books or books related to the law? What are your favorites? Okay, I want to combine this with question 8, which is, philosophy is the love of wisdom. Have you read a work of philosophy? Do you have a favorite? And this is because a lot of the stuff I was reading for my French major was political philosophy, and so I don't know if I should count that as politics or philosophy. So I've read L'Être Personne by Montesquieu. I've read selections of Philosophie dans le Boudoir by the Marquis de Sade, which were very tightly selected by my professor so that we did not have graphic rape. And we were just talking about how society should be run. Society should be run with is what the Marquis de Sade says. Any other political books? I've read some Rousseau. I've read Le Contrat Social, which I do not recommend or actually I do recommend if you want to laugh at Rousseau, because he either does not understand what he has written, or he is trolling us so hard. So all of my political books are 18th century Frenchmen. I don't particularly have a favorite. I mean, not Rousseau. I guess if my options are Rousseau, Sade, and Montesquieu, I'm going with Montesquieu. And then, in addition to the political philosophy, I've also read Plato, obviously. The things I've read in their entirety are the Symposium and the Phaedrus, which are both about the philosophy of love. Of those, I prefer the Symposium. And I have read selections of other philosophical works, so Thomas Aquinas, Descartes, the usual ones, Kant, all the stuff you read in Philosophy 101. I'm not sure if I read any Hume. Okay, going back to question 7, which was in between those two. Literature does not have a universally accepted definition. What is yours? Shit, what is written down. Possibly, since your grocery list is not literature, so maybe shit, what is written down with the intention of at least one other person reading it. Although that would make the Diary of Anne Frank not literature, because I'm pretty sure she was, I don't know, I haven't actually read it. I live 10 minutes from the Anne Frank house, and I have not read it. I don't think she was writing for an audience. So yeah, just shit, what is written down, that's literature. Number 9 is religion. Name a book or author that you have read that has influenced your own personal view of religion. Now, if he had said, name a book or author that has influenced your own personal view of religion, I'd have many answers. But one that I have read, no, I don't really have one. I mean, the closest I could get to that is Aquinas's Arguments for God and Descartes' Arguments for God, which, and Paley, I have actually read, not all of, because it's very long, but part of his actual watchmaker argument. I have read them and decided that they were insufficient reasons to believe that a God exists. So, I mean, I was already an atheist when I read those, so they did not actually influence my religion. But books that other people have read have certainly influenced my religion. I enjoy watching lectures and debates about religion, and, you know, I don't think I need to read David Hume in order to fully appreciate what David Hume had to say. I think you can just get bullet points of what he was saying, and that's all you need. You don't actually need to read philosophy, is what I'm saying. Maybe particularly philosophy of religion, or maybe just you don't actually need to read any philosophy. You just need to get the gist, which can often be done in fewer words. Yes. Okay. Question 10. Performing arts. Musicology, theater, and dance often put the performer front and center. Do you have a favorite performer? If so, who is it and why do you appreciate their works? Is there a book about this performer? So I'm pretty sure there's not a book about any of the performers I'm going to list, because I do not have favorite historical performers. I'm not like, oh, I really like this one opera singer from the 1840s, because I have not been able to experience them. And if you're a performer, unless your life is really interesting outside of your performance, I'm not particularly interested in you. I would much prefer to talk about performers that I can see and experience and enjoy. So I do have a couple. I do have an opera singer, John Reed from the D'Oyly Carte Opera Company. He is now dead. He was working in the mid-century. He's a comic baritone, so he played the roles of Major General Stanley. I literally cannot think of any other ones. Jack Point. And he, I think, does a really excellent job. I don't care who's playing any of the other roles, although I do enjoy Kenneth Stanford's rumbly baritone. But I will pretty much only listen to a D'Oyly Carte recording if John Reed is in the comic baritone role. I think he does a very good job. So I will leave a link below to a couple of his arias. Are you allowed to call them arias if it's a comic baritone? Do you have to call them patter songs? I'll leave a link to some patter songs of his if I can find individual ones. If not, I'll just leave a link to a full recording of like Princess Ida, which is my current fave. Then in terms of modern ballet performers, I have two favorite ballet performers, Carlos Acosta and Marianela Nunez. Acosta has actually recently retired from dancing, and he is now doing choreography and direction. They are both with the Royal Ballet in England. I think Carlos Acosta, he's from Cuba, and I think he originally did not train as a ballet dancer, maybe? I think he trained in, like, salsa. So he is okay with, like, breaking the classicism of ballet and using the movement as an ability, as a means by which to express character. Marianela Nunez does this to a certain extent as well, but also she just looks so happy to be dancing that she's completely electric. She will always draw your eye right to her on the stage. You cannot get distracted when you're watching Marianela Nunez dance. So in the description, I will leave a link to them doing the Act 1 finale of Don Quixote, which doesn't have the best choreography, but you do get to watch them dancing together, and the Ribbon Pas de Deux from La Femelle Gardée. And I will also leave a link to the Adagio of the Pas de Deux from the Royal Ballet's Nutcracker. Because that has Marianela Nunez dancing with another of the Royal Ballet's principals. I forget his first name, Montajirov, who trained in Russia. And Russia has, Russian ballet is much more interested in perfecting technique than expression of character. And I think when I watch Montajiro dancing with Nunez, she actually makes him a better dancer, and she makes him like get actually more into the character, and do more interesting facial expressions. So I think you are a top quality ballet dancer if you make your partner look like a better dancer, or into a better dancer. And then in terms of musical performance, these are both singer-songwriters. I think my first one is Rufus Wainwright, and he is my favorite contemporary musician. I think he is actually a better songwriter than a performer, but he's still obviously a very good performer, so I'm going to leave some links below to some live things that he's done, so you can actually see him playing the piano and singing live. So I'm going to give you Cigarettes and Chocolate Milk and The Art Teacher, and then also his rendition of Shakespeare's Sonnet 20, which I think is a good example of how does this whole like being transported by the music that he's singing, or even to put it in a less lofty way, looking like you're drunk while you're performing. I am totally down with drunk poetry readings. And if you want to sing it and play piano, all the better. And And then I will also, I'd also like to mention Tim Minchin, who I think is a better performer than singer-songwriter. He is really good at playing the piano, and he's got to like exercise his jaw because he writes himself very complicated phrases. So I will leave Prejudice for you to watch, a live performance of Prejudice, and also a live performance of Storm, which he's actually not playing the piano in. It's about a 10-minute long beat poem, which I actually saw him perform live at what was it called? It was an atheist, not convention because it was free and it was outside, but like atheist meetup, lecture, celebration of atheism on the National Mall a couple of years ago. I went with David, and David thinks that was actually the premiere of Storm. I don't think it was. Okay, question 11, last one. Visual arts. Do you have a favorite visual artist or media type? Do the two relate? Are there any books that address this relationship between artist and medium? I spoke a lot about the performing arts just now. I have less to say about the visual arts. I am more interested in performing arts than visual arts. I don't hate visual arts. I am a costume designer, so I do enjoy costume and historical dress. I'm okay if people don't consider this to be an art because it is limited in so many ways. Because you have to actually be able to put it on a human body or occasionally a non-human body. So I guess my favorite like fashion designer would be Worth. If you're not going to count clothing design, then I do quite like sculpture. And I think my favorite sculpture is Bernini's Abduction of Proserpina. It's very, I like realism, as you'll probably be able to tell. It's a very careful sculpture, and I think he must have been sculpting from live models based on like the interesting things that you wouldn't really think about. So it's here it is. Pluto is grabbing Proserpina and dragging her down to hell, and the angle of her hand hitting his face. I love, he's sculpted the tears running down her cheeks, and the thing that makes this sculpture so incredibly perfect is that her little toe on one of her feet is like flexed out, like she's using all of the muscles in her body, and I think it's a good sculpture, guys. It's a real good sculpture. So that's all I have for this video. I hope you have enjoyed it. I will be seeing you again, possibly in not the most timely fashion, but I shall do my best. Wish me luck with the move, and I'll see you guys later.